There's a lot of standards inside of this space. There's things like NLP, hero's journey, a challenge, a video series launch. These are all terms and philosophies or frameworks or modalities that we have heard, but you've likely never questioned them. You've likely never asked, where did it come from? Does it actually work? Who created it? Is there ways to improve this? The day that you realize that those terms, that terminology, the things that I just said, were created by someone at some point, and the entire industry just took it on as normal, once you make that realization, it will change your life forever. Why? Because it opens up the possibility that you can do the exact same thing. And it's not just inside of our industry. Politicians, news, media, everyone uses this to control the way industries go. And maybe it's intentional, maybe it's not. Maybe to control it in a good way, maybe in a bad way, but it doesn't matter. The concept stays the same. For me, I look at my work through that lens because I want to create new standards within this space, not to control people, not to manipulate, not to do any of that, but to improve people's lives. And that's the same thing with people that whoever created things like hypnobirthing or hypnotherapy or acupuncture, cupping, whatever it may be. Those are all modalities. Those are all processes. Those are all things that were discovered by someone at some point and named that became industry norms, meaning that their teachings, their knowledge became the standard that revolutionized their industry. Will those things become outdated at some point? Maybe. If we're moving forward and making progress, yeah, they will be. And in this episode, what I wanted to do is break down how you can use your mastery and different terminology to create an impact inside of your space that will live beyond you. There's not enough people that take this perspective when it comes to messaging. And what most people do is they look at messaging as, how do I communicate this so I make more sales? And yes, I want to do that. I want to help you do that. I can help you do it. I help people do that every single day. But I want to help you do that while making the impact you want to make. In today's episode, we're going to dive into one way on how to do it. Hi, I'm Brandon Lucero, and you're about to experience the new way to thrive in business, entrepreneurship, and life by leaning into who you are, what you love, and standing up for what you want to create. Get ready, because this is where we go against the grain, say no to outdated society norms, and we say yes to change in order to create a happier, more fulfilled world. Welcome to the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast. All right. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast. It is a stormy day here in Flagstaff, and I kind of like it. For those of you who didn't know, this winter was absolutely brutal for a lot of places, but specifically Flagstaff. It was like the most snow they've seen in 60 or 70 years. And then it was like heat this summer, record heat. For us, it wasn't too bad. It was in the 80s and 90s, which for this time of year was pretty hot. But now it's monsoon season, so I'm absolutely loving it. I can't imagine a better time than maybe a snowy day or a day like this to be inside with a nice warm drink, creating content. So glad to be here. And today we are going to be doing a single episode, a solo episode. We've been doing a lot of interviews lately and testing different directions, bringing some parenthood stuff. And it's been good. We have a lot of things in the queue right now, and we'll see where it takes us. But I wanted to bring it back to our roots. The one thing that a lot of people have been coming to us for the last couple of years, which is messaging. And so I wanted to talk about an episode, or this episode, maybe a shorter episode, we'll see. But what I wanted to talk about was, kind of I guess it's a high level view of messaging that I take when I look at messaging. And I look at messaging different than most people. I don't look at it just as a communication tool. I look at it as what are the most effective people doing, the people that really make a difference, that really have the massive followings, and not just a following like an influencer following like the Kardashians or whatever. Like anyone can just get attention online, but I'm talking about like people that were making a real significant difference through their work. And, inside of this space, the course creator space, the program space, that's what we need to do. We're not influencers. We're not influencers trying to get a sponsorship or a brand deal or something like that. I mean, if you are, then, my podcast may not be the best thing, because we talk about messaging for course creators, how to sell your own products, sell your own programs and that sort of thing, and your services and that sort of thing. So what I wanted to do was talk about how to really take a perspective on messaging to create an impact, messaging that will last beyond just you. And this is kind of how I look at messaging. When I look at the things and I just look around the world, this is how I discovered most of the messaging stuff that we teach. I just look at like, okay, what did this person say that made me feel this? I feel like I need to buy this. What did they do? How did they make me feel? Oh, this person shifted my perspective. What did they do? And I just look around and I just start looking at like, what are the most successful people doing? People with the biggest brands, people that make the biggest impact. What are they doing? And then I look at the things that are quote unquote standards inside of our space. And I'm like, how did this become a standard? And I just look at what people are doing. And that's what I wanted to talk about today, is this idea of mastery and terminology. This isn't really something that I talk about. It is in our programs. I do talk about it more with our one-on-one clients. And the reason why I talk about it more with them is because usually the one-on-one clients have a big enough brand to support terminology that can become norms inside of spaces. And, to give an example, we worked with Catherine Zinkina, who teaches manifestation, and she's been on the podcast a couple of times, and she really loves education. Like she goes through all of these different modalities of healing modalities and educating herself and learning, and then getting her own downloads. And she's able to create her own program around manifesting. But we started to work one-on-one with Catherine, and she has a big enough brand where she can come up with discoveries that can be norms inside of the space. And that's how I want you all to start looking at your messaging. So I'll give you an example here. If Catherine came up with her program, which she has around manifesting, and she discovered a new way to think or change your vibration. She found a new modality or a new framework or process or new steps that allow you to achieve something that no one else has discovered yet, no one else has figured out yet. She gets to create her own framework around it. And guess what? She gets to name it whatever she wants. And then if that framework or modality or things that she discovered works better than everything else, then she's the only one who can teach it. She's the only one who can really teach it, unless she creates a certification program or something along those lines. And then if it's good enough, it becomes a standard inside of the space. Same thing I did with thought reversal. Thought reversal was something that we discovered, we named, we use, and now other people are using it. Other people reference it. Other people teach it, even though they have not licensed it or gotten a certification, but that's fine. I want my work to become a standard inside the space. Now what starts to happen is now my friends like James Wedmore and Catherine Zinkina and some other people that I've mentored, Marley Jacks, I know talks about thought reversals in her program and stuff like that. And they start using it. And so what starts happening is when more and more people use it, more and more people reference it, it becomes a standard. It becomes a norm. And when we look at certain things like NLP, someone created it at some point. Then it worked so well that everyone started using it. Then there are certification programs and it became a standard inside of the space. But sometimes we just look at that stuff and we just go, it's just NLP. But it's like, well, how did NLP become the standard of persuasive language? Let's look at that. What happened? What did I think it was Richard Bandler. Like, what did he do? How did that become a thing? How do I do that? And it starts with mastery. And this might be a harsh truth for some of you on the call or this podcast, but it literally requires mastery, and mastery requires experience and consistency. And there are people here that have spent so much time getting degrees and certifications to now create a course that all you're doing is you're just regurgitating everyone else's information instead of just trying to discover your own. And look, those things are good. We need certifications, we need education, we need degrees, but that should become your like baseline of, okay, let me get started and let me get as much experience as I possibly can so that I can start finding my own discoveries. And so what I wanted to talk about today was mastery, but combining that with terminology. So when you start to get all of this experience, you start to work with more people, you start to discover better, newer, different ways of doing things. And that's what I did with thought reversal, is I just started looking at like, what are some of these top people doing? Oh, they're shifting perspective. Well, how do you shift perspective? Oh, look, it came down to a belief. How do we shift beliefs? Okay, this is what we do. And then I just created it through all of the experience and testing that we were doing within our brand and with our clients, and became a thing. But again, it requires mastery. And so it will not happen if you just go get certifications and degrees. If that's what you're going to do, like your plan to be creating the best program ever is just getting certifications and degrees, you're never going to have great messaging. Like you might still be successful, but you'll never be a thought leader, and you will never create a standard inside the space, and you'll never have as big of an impact as other people can have. And it's very simple. The main reason why you can't do that just with certifications and degrees is because you're literally regurgitating someone else's knowledge, someone else's work. So when I get to work with messaging, I, to this day, have not taken an NLP class. I have not taken a communication program. I don't have a degree in anything. I don't have a certification in anything. I don't have a certification in copywriting. I don't have a certification in communication. I don't have a certification in any persuasion stuff. The only thing that I've ever learned that wasn't mine was sleight of mouth patterns. And that was taught to me from Jim Thornton, but he's not even the creator of it. Someone else had created sleight of mouth patterns. And I'm going to look it up because I want to give them credit for it. So again, those are the only things that I've, that's sleight of mouth. Sleight of mouth. I'm looking it up as we go, as we record, Joe Rogan style. So Robert Dilts, that's right. Okay, so Robert Dilts created the sleight of mouth patterns. That's the only formal training that I have. Everything else is literally based off of experience, my own discoveries, my own findings. Now, I don't recommend doing that because I didn't start off with messaging. I started off with a bunch of other things and learned messaging along the way, and then found out and realized I just had a natural ability to see it, to understand it. And so I do think that we should start off with certifications and degrees, but it can't be where we stay. It can't be where we're going to build a high impact business. If you want a high impact business, you need mastery and you need to be focusing on discovery. And then when you discover things, then you can create your own terminology around it. When you start to create your own terminology around it, that's when you can start to create standards inside of the space. Now, if people start using your terminology, so when it expands outside of your brand, that's when you start creating life-changing impact. And this is when you start creating knowledge that will live beyond you. And anytime you go get a certification or degree, that's what you're doing. You're learning someone else's work. You're learning someone else's discoveries. And so what we want is to be able to eventually get to the point where you're coming up with your own stuff. So just to give you some ways and ideas of how this would work is we all have different, I've heard of different modalities. So like NLP, would it be a modality, a communication modality, a way of communicating, persuasive language. Hypnosis is another thing that someone discovered at some point, gave it a name, and it became a standard inside of the space. And people pay millions and millions of dollars a year to learn it, to master it, to become a hypnosis master. But that was discovered by someone at some point. Same thing within the space. You know, a lot of us do challenges. Some point, at some time, someone invented the challenge and tried it and then named it the challenge. And if I was that person, I would create a certification program around it. I would do all these different things around it. Same thing with like launches, right? There's video series launch, which someone created at some point. I don't know if it was Jeff Walker or someone else, but someone uncovered that, and you become known for that thing. And it becomes a normal term within the space. Because when I got started, guess what? There's no such thing as a video series launch 11 years ago. or I had never heard of it, and then someone created it at some point. But even things in like the spiritual realm, like past life regressions, that's just a normal thing, but that was created and discovered by someone at some point, right? So modalities, the frameworks you use can be turned into your own terminology. And if they're good enough, like it's based off of real, actual mastery and evidence, and it really works, guess what? You just created a brand new modality that will change the trajectory of people's lives forever. It's not going to happen because you created an Instagram page and a course. I mean, maybe it will. Chances are it won't. But when you start to create your own terminology, your own modalities, your own frameworks, your own stuff, and it can't just be made up for the sake of making it up. It actually needs to be a better new way that you discovered. And that's where real thought leadership and momentum starts to happen. But this can happen again, just in the terminology realm. So like with me, thought reversals, that's a framework for a piece of content. I have not created a communication modality yet. It's definitely on my mind, but I have created terms, frameworks, content pieces, like self-diagnosing is another one we're working on right now. Thought reversal content. We're the creators of that. We discovered it and we recognized that people were using it. But this is all around you. This is how standards become standards and society norms become society norms. And most people will never question it. They're just like, oh yeah, NLP is the best way. Or, oh yeah, hypnosis is the normal thing to go do. They never question it. They never question, where did it come from? Who created it? It's like, they just think that most people never question it. They just go, in their mind, their subconscious is like, oh yeah, that's the standard. We don't question it. That's just what we do. But question that stuff because you can find a new and a better way. And again, this is all around you. People have been doing it for years. The government's been doing it for a really long time. The news has been doing it for a really long time. Perfect example, the term conspiracy theorist. That was created by the government when people started questioning things that they were doing. I think it was the CIA. I think I should probably have looked that up, but I think it was the CIA said, okay, all these people are questioning all these things. They're not really believing what we're telling them to believe. So let's create a term called conspiracy theorist, and we're going to come up with a definition of what that is, and we're going to tell the news to use it, and they're going to start calling them conspiracy theorists, and no one's going to want to be labeled as a conspiracy theorist, which means by default, they're going to stop questioning everything that we're doing. That's literally how a conspiracy theorist was created. It was a term that a lot of people started using that then became norm, and they gave it a negative connotation, so no one wanted to become it. And you can do the same thing. You can create things like a common enemy within your brand. So conspiracy theorist almost became like a common enemy to the general public. No one wanted to be that, right? It was the thing you didn't want to be. It's a common enemy. So for me, inside of my messaging, I create things like content circle of death. And I outline what it is. And people go like, oh my God, I am stuck in the content circle of death. And then my common enemy is how-to content. If you do how-to content 100% of the time, that is what's causing you to become stuck in the content circle of death. These are all my own terms, my own discoveries that I'm starting to use. And again, love him, hate him, doesn't matter. This next thing I'm about to say is not something on politics, but it's another perfect example when we use Trump and he starts coming up with the name of fake news. So the news that publishes or has unfair narratives and different things like that. He came up with the name. Now it's spreading. A lot of his supporters and followers use the term fake news. Everyone on this in America probably knows what fake news is because it is a term that Trump used. The media now uses it. People use it. People on social media are using it. They're using his term. It's something he created. It's genius. I don't know why more people don't do this. Another example, hero's journey. Hero's journey was a storytelling process that someone created at some point. Again, I don't remember. I should probably look it up. So I'm giving people credit for these. So let's look it up. Hero's journey. It's probably people yelling at me. Brandon, it was so-and-so who created it. So hero's journey, who created that? Sorry, if you're sitting there screaming into the speaker, it was that person. I apologize. So, sounds like there's a lot of different people. Oh, look at that. So Otto Rank and Lord Raglan, popularized through Joseph Campbell and influenced by Carl Jung's. Okay, so it looks like it was, but again, that even proves my point of like things can be built off of other people's learnings and teachings, which is why we have to start with the degrees. We have to start with the certifications. So we at least get the standard of where we're at. But keep your eyes open to all these other things that we can go after. You know, another way I like describing this to our students is like, if you're a doctor and you're working with all these patients and you start realizing they're all having the same symptoms, and you go, wow, they're all having the same symptoms, but there's nothing created or discovered that would like tell us what this is. And you could be the first one to discover anxiety. You're like, oh man, all these people are having these symptoms here. I'm going to call this anxiety. Well, guess what? Not only did you just have one of the biggest discoveries in the medical realm and mental health realm, but you also become the only person who knows how to solve it because you discovered it. So if we're accurate in our problems, we're accurate in our symptoms, we're accurate in our discoveries, you can start to come up with all of these different terminologies. And then as more people adapt it, and the only way people are going to adapt it is if it's actually good, actually true, actually a better way. If it's actually a real discovery, not something you're just tweaking or making up because you just want something of your own. You know, people start to use it. So let's go back to that example with Catherine, and she came up with a new modality of how to manifest or raise your vibration. It's something we've never heard before. And I was like, oh my God, Catherine, that's unbelievable. It works so well. And then James is like, oh my God, it works so well. And then Jim Thornton is like, oh my God, that works so well. And then Jim starts teaching it and giving Catherine the credit. And James starts using it and giving Catherine the credit. And I start using it and giving Catherine the credit. It's like, have you guys tried this to raise your vibration? Have you tried this? Have you tried this? What starts to happen is that my audience, Jim's audience, James's audience, and then Catherine's audience are all hearing the same term. And it is a much better way. Guess what? Now we have so much momentum to creating a new standard of a modality or a process that no one has discovered before. And guess what? It gives Catherine thought leadership status. It now takes her work and makes it something that will live beyond her. I don't think enough people are looking at messaging and mastering terminology enough. Because when you start to get to the status where people are taking your teachings and using it, this is when you become the only person that people want to work with. You become unstoppable. People cannot catch you because you're literally discovering things that people haven't discovered yet. And when you discover things that people haven't discovered yet, you can teach things that people can't teach. You can have messaging that people can't have. And this also can happen with solutions. So there's terminologies you can use it to label problems. You can do it to label symptoms. You can use it as a common enemy. You can use it as a modality. You can use it as solutions. So like even things like cupping, cupping, that healing modality, which is using cups and whatever. I don't really know how it works, but you see people with these cups and black and blue circles all over their body and it's supposed to heal or whatever. I probably sound super ignorant on what cupping actually is because I really don't know what it is, but it's a perfect example. Same thing with hypnotherapy, or hypnobirthing is another one. Someone at some point discovered hypnobirthing, which my wife and I have done with our second child and helped out tremendously. Like it was amazing. People are now certified in hypnotherapy and hypnobirthing. Again, NLP, thought reversals, these are all perfect ways of creating and discovering things that people haven't discovered and giving them their own labels. So you can start to do this within your whole brand. And if you are an NGM student, we talk about this inside of your messaging ecosystem to a certain degree. We talk about common enemy and coming up with your own names for certain things. But what I really want to instill or to really have you grasp is the idea around process. So it's really about having the mastery, but also looking for discovery of better processes to achieve certain results. And if you can achieve new, different, better processes that do not exist and have not been discovered by someone yet, you get to name it. And then it gets adapted. And then it becomes a society norm or a industry norm or a standard norm. And it will maybe eventually at some point become outdated, because if it becomes a norm, everyone starts using it, and that becomes the starting off point, which means I know it at some point, thought reversals will become an industry standard all the way through the entire industry. That's the goal. But then that will become the norm. Thought reversals will just become the norm. I won't have an edge anymore. So that means everyone will be at the same jumping off point as me, which means I need to come up with more discoveries and more and just continue my work and go deeper with it. But I want to be that person. I want to be the person who is constantly looking for new, better, different ways of doing stuff. And the only way to do that is a focus on mastery, working with more people, testing more things, taking more risks, coming up with more discoveries, and starting to name them all. So that's what I wanted to talk to you guys about. A pretty short episode this week, but start thinking about that. Start focusing on mastery. Start focusing on taking action. Start focusing on working with more people. Start playing around with different terminology, different processes, different frameworks, different names within your industry, within your brand. And if you can get people to start using them, and in order for people to start using them, is you're going to have consistency, repetitiveness. You're going to have to use it all the time. People will start to take it on. And that's the end goal. So again, it's going to require a little bit of critical thinking. You're likely going to have to question things, but it starts with coming from the understanding of that everything that you think is normal, everything that you think is a standard, everything that you think is the right way was once created by someone at some point. And if you're able to question things, if you're able to see through the lens that the industry that you're in right now was created by nothing else other than people just like you, it shows you that you too can become the person that changes the industry that you're in. So let me know what you think. Let me know how you're going to use it. Start thinking about mastery and your terminology. Start using it within your brand and let me know how it goes. If you love this episode and you want more messaging related episodes, well, leave us a review on iTunes and let me know. Say, Brandon, I love the messaging episodes. Do more of them. And leave us a review and we will incorporate more of the messaging episodes. So with that said, I'll sign off here and I'll see you guys all on another episode. Hey guys, thank you so much for checking out another episode of the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, go below, hit the subscribe button, and make sure you click on that bell icon and get notified every time we drop a new episode. Now, if you're looking for the show notes, we have them linked underneath this video, as well as our social media handles and some links to free training and offers that we drop from time to time to help you guys even further. So go check those out if you're interested, and thank you so much for tuning in to the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast.